What's up everybody, my name is Vindrake from Cat's Cozy Games. In this tutorial, we'll show you our completed ore processing system in the IVAge and how every part of it works. We'll start with what machines you need to craft, how to streamline a subnet transportation system with dedicated networks for each processing task, how to use OreDictionary Cards, and how to take your system to the next level with the advanced stocking input bus. Now that may seem like a lot, but don't worry, you're going to be a pro in no time, so let's get straight into it. Alright, the first thing that we should go over is what voltage age do you want to start doing OreProc? And so there's several different feelings that people are going to have about this. My recommendation is the IVAge, and that is for one simple reason. Because applied energistics is very, very powerful at managing OreProc, but also at IV, you get a hold of this, the OreDictionary filter card. This is very powerful, and there's a couple, you just need this a handful of times to really take your setup to the next level. And so you do need an insane voltage type filter, so you do need to make an IV conveyor. You just have to dip your toe into IV, not too far. So if you can get this, I do highly recommend this. However, let's show you what I have set up at what we had previously going, basically. So this right here is our old steam multi-block setup. And basically there's several things you could do. You could use the steam centrifuge for a while. And, you could use the grinder if you have raw ore and you could process that. I use the forge hammer quite a bit to take, say a crushed ore, and all you have to do is just throw it into the forge hammer right here and you get the impure dust. And then what I like to do after that is I take the impure dust and throw it into a simple washer. All right. So here's our forge hammer right here, the steam forge hammer, very easy to make. And then here is our simple washer. I believe this is an EV simple washer. And that'll get you pretty far. Now, you will be missing out on a ton of secondary byproducts. But in a lot of cases, unless there's something very specific that you're looking for, you're not going to have too bad of a time by missing out on those for a while. Now, eventually, those can become more important. And again, there are niche cases where you do need to pay attention to those byproducts. But keep in mind, you can't even get the macerator byproducts until HV macerator anyway. So I recommend some form of this, and if you have applied energistics, you can actually put a storage bus on here, and you can just have things go into a chest that then goes into the simple washer, for example, or the forge hammer, and you can whitelist a bunch of items. So I whitelisted everything manually, and it was pretty simple and straightforward, and it just got the job done. Right, there are other really powerful things you can do. There's logistics pipes. We're not going to get into that today, but if you ever want to look into logistics pipes, you could do some pretty powerful ore dictionary stuff with that early game, if you care to invest in that. And so from this point forward, I'm going to assume that you are in the IVAge or higher, and you have that OreDictionary card. So let's talk about what machines you want, how many of them you want. This might be a bit overkill for you at this point in the game, in the IVAge, but it definitely can't hurt. If you can pump out this many multis, this works like butter. This is plenty of multis. You're never going to have a backup of anything. I will say the macerators here and the centrifuges are where your bottlenecks can occur quite frequently, just because there are so many times when you need to use these machines specifically. So if you're going to make a lot of something, make a lot of macerators and centrifuges. Now, what we have going here is we have these in quads, which means that we have 4 machines wall shared with each other, and then we're wall sharing a quad with another quad here. So this is the equivalent of 4 quads total shared with each other. And the way the quad works, by the way, is, let's say that this thermal centrifuge right here, the large thermal refinery, this is a 3x3 square, and we're just sharing the outside walls in 4 different places. And so yeah, it basically mirrors itself, right? So pretty simple. If you've never wall shared something like this before, it's not too complicated. But yeah, what machines do you need besides macerator and centrifuge? I definitely recommend ore washers, because there are some nice byproducts you can get from that sometimes. Sifters are really good, diamond, nether star, lots of different things. Definitely some sifters. Here we have 8 of those and then 8 ore washers, which is kind of a comfortable amount for this point. We have a forge hammer for things that we don't really care about the byproducts of, so you can just forge hammer it straight into that impure dust or pure dust, like I showed you before. Thermal refinery is for thermal centrifuging, and there's like niche cases. You don't use this a ton, so just 1 quad is plenty. Here we have a multi-smelter. This is completely optional, but there's going to be certain dusts like roasted nickel, things like that, that serve no other purpose, and they're not even worth electrolyzing. The byproducts that you get from that electrolyzing are not that great. So you might as well just smelt it into ingots that you can use later. And then here we have a simple washer. This is a multi version of a simple washer. We have it in simple washer mode. And that's just for when you don't care about the impure or pure dust byproducts either, which there'll be, a handful of times that is the case. Finally, we have this, not a commonly used multi-block, but I'm enjoying it here, the Amazon Warehousing Depot. We have a schematic dust in here. This takes small dusts and it turns them into full dusts. And we're getting small dusts because of maceration of chipped and flawed gems. Let me see if I can show you that real quick. Yeah, so these right here, chipped emeralds, they don't give you a full dust. It'll only give you a portion of a small pile, and the flawed as well only give you 2. And so you need a way to sort of automatically turn these into full dust because you really don't want your system clogged up with small dusts. So I do recommend this as well. And so that about covers all of the machine processes that we're going to do here. Use your own judgment and your own resource allocation to kind of judge how much of this you actually need. But it is nice to future-proof this and to make sure that you have an area large enough to house all these things and for future developments as well. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and come watch Kat and I stream every Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're on all the streaming sites, YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. We hope to see you there. Next up, we're going to talk about all of the different subnets and how applied energistics really kicks in. So this looks very complicated. Don't worry, this is going to become very clear very soon. So everything that you see that is purple, that is our main network. So let's come up here initially. I'm going to show you this. This is basically the entry point into our OreProc system. So this is where all of the ores and stuff that we get initially go. And so we have a storage bus here. The rest of these are empty, so just pay attention to this left one. We have a storage bus here on the main net side. Then we have an ME interface on the cyan side. Cyan, the best way to describe cyan is it's our main OreProc subnet, and it is basically the delivery network. It's the interstate that all of the ores travel onto to then reach the secondary highways, which are the individual processes that they go to. And then the final step where they go into storage. So just think of it as a transportation network more than anything else, the cyan subnet. And as you can see, I've got a controller here just to make sure we have enough channels. This is overkill, but it's nice to have. And by the way, you do not need wireless to do any of this, but it does really help cleaning up. So because you have so many different subnets. If you can afford a little bit of wireless connectors at this point, if you can afford the energy, I do recommend this. So let me show you why that OreDictionary card is so important, because it's really helpful for the entry point into the system. By the way, you could put stuff directly into the cyan and bypass the main network. I like for stuff to go into the main network initially. We have this on insert only. That means that main network can't see the storage of the cyan network. And so we've also got the OreDictionary card. Now, when you put this into your storage bus, it nullifies all the whitelist capabilities in these slots here. And instead you have this right here, OreDictionary filter. When we click on this, there's this, I think this is like regex or something like that, regex. Basically, I'm going to show you a link to a wiki article that has some recommended regex strings that you can put into these OreDictionary filters. But I'm also going to show you exactly what I have here. So raw ore, we want this going in here for sure. Any crushed variant whatsoever goes in here as well. And each of these little vertical lines, these mean ore. So raw ore, or crushed ore, or impure dust as well, just in case those find their way to the main system. And same thing for pure dust as well. So all those things will then go into cyan and begin trying to find a location in order to process. Now, once your ore hits the cyan network, how does it know where to go next? Well, that's where all of these storage buses come in. These are every single one of these that you see. These are all storage bus ME interface combos. And so the ME interface is always on the other color side, and then the storage bus is always on the cyan side. And so that's how the dust or the crushed ore or the raw ore, whatever it is, it's looking for these storage buses, and it's going by their settings in order to figure out where it needs to go. So let's take a look at this. So we have red for centrifuge, blue for forge hammer, green for macerator, ore washing, etc. Every single type of process has its own colored subnetwork. And also an ME controller just to make sure that we have enough channels. But here we have a wireless connector, and this is not connected to cyan. This is connected to the light blue, for example. And same thing with the rest of these. And those basically go to underneath wherever we have the machine housed. And then we'll send the items accordingly. So let's take a look at this first, macerator. So if we look at one of these storage buses here, these 3 horizontal storage buses, lots of things that we manually whitelisted. basically lots of purified crushed ores and the crushed ores themselves. You're going to look, and some of this is experience, I won't lie, because you don't always know exactly what you need. But hopefully by this point, yeah, you know what you need in a lot of circumstances. So we know that looking at this, you get lithium pretty much every way. You know, is it worth trying to ore wash as well to get an extra 11% chance at lithium? In my opinion, no, because there's a lot of sources of lithium. You're probably getting it from clay electrolysis, etc. So what you can do is you can send it to the macerator. You send the crushed lithium ore to the macerator. You get the impure pile. And then, okay, well, then it needs to go to the centrifuge. How does it know to go to the centrifuge? Well, whenever you see a storage bus up at the top here, this is where we have an OreDictionary filter. And so if I look at this one, and this is for the centrifuge again, dust impure and dust pure. So this is how you're going to automatically send impure dust, because there's really nothing else you want to do with these other than the handful of times that you want to simple wash instead of doing this. But this is sort of like the default route. And I do have this at a lower priority so that in case we do something like maybe we don't even care about the secondary output, we just want to simple wash it and just turn it into the final dust. That's where we have a couple of these impure dusts right here. And so this is priority 0, then the other one is priority -1000. But usually they will go through this one right here. And other than that, you actually don't need anything else for centrifuge. The centrifuge is just for impure and pure piles. That's actually it. But let's look at the macerator again, because there is also an OreDictionary. And again, macerator, centrifuge, these are two of the most important machines you have. So let's look at the OreDictionary for this as well. And so this is where your raw ores go, because that's the only thing you can really do with them is macerate them, or that's the best thing to do with them. Once a crushed centrifuge, once it's gone through the thermal refinery, you definitely want to macerate it. And then right here also, I have gem chipped and gem flawed. This is where those flawed and chipped gems come from, where we macerate them into those small piles of dust. And then those actually end up going into that Amazon warehouse, that brown multi-block that I showed you before. And that has an OreDictionary card as well. And if we take a look at that, dust small, that's it, right? Very simple. Then we get the full dusts, etc. There's a couple other things. We'll go ahead and take a look at a couple more of these. But a lot of times you're just going to go through, you're going to hit R when you look at these. You're going to look at the Gregtech ore processing tree. You're going to figure out which path is the most optimal without being sort of like wasteful of a process at the same time. So if you're just getting like, I don't know, stone dust as a secondary byproduct or something, you probably don't want to do that, right? You probably just want to stick it in the forge hammer, the simple washer, call it a day, right? But here we have some purified ores that we actually want to send through the thermal centrifuge. And again, most of these are just priority 0. And so then they're going to go into the white network, for example. And let's take a look at the white network. Let's come over here. So this is our white network, and it's very, very simple. It's just one storage bus onto an input bus. Actually extremely simple. And so that does mean we have a limited space. So there is like not unlimited buffer. I'll show you how you can get more buffer in just a moment. More item buffer in between processes. But yeah, basically it's going to go into white network. It's going to be like, oh, okay, this is the one place that I know I can go is inside this input bus because of the storage bus here. And then it'll go in there and then it'll automatically process. And then it comes out of the output buses. Now, whenever the ore or dust or whatever it is exits the machine and is complete, you want to use output bus MEs. I do recommend going ahead and starting putting storage cells in here because these can back up a little bit sometimes. This provides more internal buffer for the output bus ME itself. But you always want these output buses connected to the cyan network. Again, this is the transportation network. And the reason for that is because we wanted to go back into the system and figure out, okay, is there somewhere else that I need to go for further processing? Or is it at the end of the line and I need to go into storage now? And that's the cyan network is where all of that is decided. And again, this is all decided over here with all these storage buses. So we can look at a couple of other things. Smelter. These are the dusts that I tend to put in the smelter. Yellow, brown, limonite dust, galena dust, roasted iron, roasted nickel. Because again, if you look at the actual, you actually can't even electrolyze roasted nickel. I think you can with the brown limonite though, and the yellow limonite. Let's see. No, but you could centrifuge them. You get iron dust, you get oxygen, hydrogen. I don't tend to value these as byproducts very, very highly. You may disagree. You may need them more than I do. I do try to have oxygen and hydrogen handled by themselves without having to rely on this. So it's a nice bonus, but it's not something that I'm really honing in on. So in my opinion, you know, I find it much simpler to just send it to the multi-smelter, and smelt it into ingots to use later. Again, simple washer, we are washing a lot of these crushed ores because we don't care about necessarily the secondary output of ore washing, this right here, but we do want to sift it. And if we're going to sift something, then it always has to be in purified form. So you're going to see nothing but purified here. I said we didn't have much ore washing. We actually do have quite a bit of ore washing. You may vary in your decision. You may decide not to ore wash as many things and just send them to the simple washer to then be sifted or forge hammer or whatever you decide to do. And that about covers all the different processes and where they go. Again, we've got all these different colors going to their corresponding machines. It's just a storage bus. It's just an input bus. Very, very simple. You don't even need to worry about it. And with these shared several quads, you do have to have a couple different input buses. And so sometimes they'll all congregate. And if you have all of the priorities the same, they do tend to kind of split up between the machines. But when you get to LUV, there's actually a very good way to solve this. So we'll show that in just a moment. By the way, for power, I do like having a localized Lapatronic supercapacitor. It's just a nice buffer. I like having these in like different operating areas. And so we just have a IV64M dynamo hatch, and that's splitting off into these different directions and powering everything. We're actually using EUGT P2P to transport the power. If you don't know about that, don't worry about that too much, but it's just kind of a way to send power through your AE2 network. You can access it with an advanced memory card. You can right-click this, and you can actually change the type, and you can select GTEU. And you would want an input on, well, actually it doesn't matter where the input and the output are, but you'll connect the two. And so we have this coming from like a main LSC where our main power is generated. One more point about ore entry into your Cyan network, your OreProc network. Sometimes your ores and such are not actively entering the system, but maybe they're stored passively on some other subnet located onto the main network. So for instance, we have a B subnet where all of our combs, a lot of times they're made into purified ores, and they're stored on that B subnet. So the main network can see them, but it doesn't enter the main network, which means it's never going to try to activate and go into this storage bus, this entry point that we talked about earlier. So what do you do about those? Well, I like to have Cyan network as a receiving end. Then I like to have these these chest buffers, basically. And so what you can do is you can put conveyor modules set to import on the sides of them. And then you can have ME interfaces connected to your main network, and you can ghost drag this over to the ME interface, and it will grab all these ores until it's grabbed all of them. And so purified lapis, nickel, zinc, redstone, nether star ore, firestone, this is all stuff that we're getting from B combs, which are processed in the LCR, and then stored on an off mainnet subnet. So this is how you're going to grab those. There may be other instances of things that you want to grab. And this is overkill right now, don't get me wrong, but this is a nice way of getting those into the Cyan network actively in order to actually be processed by your OreProc. So right now you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, great. All this processing is great. What about the end product? Where is that going to go? How's it going to know how to go there? Where's my copper dust in the end here, my gold dust? Where's that going to go? Well, we have a destination network. This is black for us, end of the line, like I like to say here. And that's where all of our stuff is stored. You could send this stuff to main network as well. I just kind of like seeing what OreProc itself has produced. So I do like having that on a subnet. And so mainnet is actually able to see that. And mainnet can see that, by the way, with one of these right here. You just put a storage bus on your main network side. Set it to extract only, no need to whitelist. You can put any kind of priority you want. You can put higher, lower priority, depending on whether you want stuff extracted first or last. Doesn't matter. And then an ME interface on the black side, so the storage side. And so, yeah, how does stuff know how to get to black network? Well, that's where the OreDictionary card comes in one more time. So we have an OreDict whitelist for dusts and gems. So let's click on this. There's our OreDictionary card right there. Click on this. This is a bit of a complex string. Again, you can refer to that wiki article that I've linked in the description for a different version of this. I'll show you what I've gone with though. So we've got the dust prefix. And then these exclamation marks here are exceptions to that rule. So we want dust going in, but okay, and exclamation point, we don't want dust impure, right? We want that going to centrifuging instead. Same thing with dust pure right here. We also want that going to the centrifuge instead, so we don't prioritize that here. Dust small, we want going inside the Amazon warehouse packager. So those are all of our exceptions. Then we do an OR symbol, the vertical line here, and we want gems, right? But again, we don't want chipped or flawed gems because we want those being macerated into the small dust first. And then finally, we have ingot as well, because we are making ingots from the multi-smelter in a handful of situations. So a bit complicated, but if you do copy and paste this works flawlessly. And that's just facing an ME interface on the black side. And storage, I do like having this at the lowest priority because it means that certain situations over here can override this if you do need it to go somewhere else instead, or you need something else done with that first. So I do recommend having this the lowest priority. And of course, you do want this on insert only. And then I have this right here, highest priority, a specific whitelist, because there are certain things, certain purified ores, for example, that you don't want fully processed. You want that to be saved for a special chemical process. A really good example of that is indium concentrates. Let's look that up real quick. So indium concentrate is very, very important as a precursor to making actual indium dust. This is vital in the IV, LUV going on, those ages. And so what you need is purified galena ore, purified sphalerite ore, very specifically. So if we look at our specific whitelist highest priority, which by the way, I've got it like 10,000, you know, the super large number. There's our purified galena, there's our purified sphalerite. Things like monazite, bastnasite for their respective lines. Scheelite, crushed bauxite, crushed ilmenite for titanium line, barite dust. Actually, I don't know why that's there. I'm not 100% sure. And then raw oil sands ore, because that's the only raw ore that actually cannot be macerated. And so you might want to save that to put in a centrifuge in a different location later if you're interested in the heavy oil that you can get from that. But yeah, these are basically the two different ways that stuff will enter our black network and the end of the line. And then that is pretty much the end of the OreProc. That is explained fully. All right, I do want to show you one more thing that's going to kick your OreProc up to the next level. And this is really cool. This is something that you get access to in the LUVAge. It's called the Advanced Stocking Input Bus. If you've never seen this before, this is really good for a lot of auto processing stuff as well. But I'll go over how to use this in OreProc specifically. Basically, this is going to take a look at whatever network storage this is connected to. And it's going to be able to look at everything in that storage. And then it's going to pull whatever it can possibly pull into the machine that it's in automatically. So being able to see an entire network storage can be really useful in those situations. And that's why we have all these ME drives and these terminals as well, because we can create like very large buffers. So what I'm going to do right here for thermal centrifuge, I'm going to throw in some storage cells, 64K. You can do larger, smaller, whatever you want, however much buffer you want, basically. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the only storage bus that's connected on white network, which is underneath the one singular input bus that we have on the thermal refineries. And what we can do is we can actually get rid of the storage bus completely and get rid of the input bus. And we can put a advanced stocking input bus in here. And so now we can right click this device online. And what you want to do is you want to left click this right here to toggle automatic item pulling from ME. And so what that's going to do, it's going to be able to see anything that's in those drives, essentially. It will be visible here, and then it will be able to pull from that. Now, if you right-click this button, there's additional parameters. So you can set the stack size, so you can like wait until you have a full 64 stack, for instance, or 32, whatever you want. Because let's say you only wanted to run like 16 at a time because you're interested in some sort of parallel or something, then you can do that. But this is really cool right here. I wouldn't recommend doing this on every single stocking input bus you ever have, but you can reduce this to even just 1 if you want. Now, I like to reduce it to 20, just give it a little bit of leeway. That way it's not checking things constantly. So every 1 second, it will check this storage or the stocking input bus, or it will check storage to see if there's anything that it can grab. And then the machine will automatically process it. Basically, what this allows is not only for that extra buffer of storage, but also it allows for much more responsiveness. Sometimes when you put stuff in an input bus in a multi, it can take up to 5 seconds to finally kick on and start its operation. However, this is going to start within 1 second, if not sooner, which is really, really nice. And so I definitely recommend replacing all of your input buses with those advanced stocking input buses and having drives and all these ME drives. And your OreProc is going to be smooth as butter. You're really going to enjoy this. You're going to be processing materials like crazy. You're going to have so many materials. I really hope that tutorial helped you all out. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more GTNH tutorials and live streams. And until next time, take care.